And we're recording. Hi, Kristen. How are you? Welcome to Let's Talk
Oh,
Paralegal. How's it going?
very good. Good morning. How are you?
Oh, it's a pleasure having you on the show. We spoke a little bit before the recording, so I'm sure this is going to be amazing. And we're going to have such a great time and such an insightful conversation. So I'm looking forward to your input and, of course, my tidbits, which I always love to put in. So let's get started. I'm excited. We were first going to go over the way that a paralegal kind of visualizes the role versus like the employer, and in this case an attorney looks at the paralegal role. So you want to kind of put your intake on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for inviting me to participate in this. I'm really excited.
Yay.
Um, so, in terms of how an attorney looks at the paralegal role, and of course, I can only speak to myself, so a little bit of context. At this point, I've been practicing for about 7 years. I'm not sure that I identify with the young lawyer in that I've got about 7 years worth of experience, but in terms of age, I am still on the younger side. And I think that there's a little bit of a cross section between the older lawyers and maybe how they are used to or were trained to work with paralegals, and the types of training that at least I myself experienced coming up for working with paralegals. And I think that it has to be said that not every young lawyer, in fact, probably the majority of young lawyers coming into a new job have no idea how to work with a paralegal.
Hmm.
It's not something they teach you in law school. You don't really
Interesting.
know what's the difference between a paralegal and a secretary. I think you kind of have some sense of the different job descriptions. And if you're trained at a law firm that does a good job about explaining different roles internally, then you would know you should ask this question of your paralegal and you should ask this question of a secretary or this question of someone else. But in truth, I never received any training really on how I was supposed to work with a paralegal. So I think we have to start with that kind of foundational knowledge. I also think that it's true that there are some paralegals who are so brilliant and know so much more about the law than a first year associate, second year associate, even some senior lawyers. That there also needs to be said, some attorneys, especially the baby ones, may feel intimidated to talk to some paralegals. So I
Okay.
think
I
we
Yeah,
have to
I
have that
never
context.
I never looked at it that way, actually. But, like we were talking about before, the paralegals are not trained to work with attorneys either, right? So they're trained on working on the caseload, completing tasks. That's basically what the paralegal studies programs do. And me teaching those paralegal programs now, I complete context, right? So full circle. So it really does, there is a big disconnect between the attorney and the paralegal. And like we were saying before, it really has to be more of a teamwork and a partnership because we're all reaching for the same goals. And also that can also transcend through like financial, right? How much you're going to pay them, what actually they're going to do, those bottlenecks that they need to complete. So it all starts with the job description. When the employer is looking for any position to fill, the job description is the utmost important because that is really what's going to generate what exactly it is that you need. And a lot of people, a lot of employers, a lot of law firms in general do not know what they need. Like you just said, you don't know what the paralegal role is, supposed to fill. So, it all depends on whether you're a small firm, a sole practitioner, mid to large firm. It really depends on your process, right? So your process has to be a strong foundation. And once you have a hold of that foundation, the rest is going to be easy. Once you have like an intake process, a caseload process, a closing file process, the client experience is the most important. So from the time when you're creating a process, from the time that the client goes in to your office or virtually, right? Because now we're during the pandemic, to the time that the closing of their file, whatever that entails, there should be a streamlined process. So once the firm has that process, I think the paralegal role can go ahead and be placed in that process. And the job description can be created within that process. So I think the paralegal role is more like a chameleon. It really depends on the firm's needs, the paralegal experience, right? Because we do have, just like young attorneys, there are young paralegals. straight out of paralegal school. So, you know, we do have different types of levels of paralegals. Then you have the full blown, the 20-year plus paralegals, which I at times even feel that even though you have 20 years of experience, you're only experienced in like particular tasks. Like not every paralegal knows how to perform legal research. That is the biggest disconnect, right? Because usually that role in big law firms are filled with law clerks, you know, junior to senior law students, right? Paralegals weren't really meant to fill that role, but now paralegals yearn for more and want to know more, that they're training themselves in legal research and they've implemented it in the paralegal studies to kind of get a leg up and really understand the full process of drafting, right? Because without the legal research concept, it's really hard to draft. You can't really draft something without knowing the context of the actual I guess, law that goes behind the argument. So what are your thoughts on that disconnect?
Yeah, I mean, I think for everyone involved, and this is really how we try to do things differently at Corp Law and be more collaborative, which I think is essential for really being able to, provide holistic solutions for clients. Everyone has to have a sense of what's going on. It's true for everyone, where you give someone a discrete project without context, without a knowledge of why someone's doing what they're doing, it's very hard for that person to be anything other than a task-based thinker. And so that does create a disconnect, because if you want somebody who is creative problem solving, you have to give them enough knowledge so they can do that. Otherwise, they're just doing tasks because that's all you've asked them to do. And so I'm absolutely with you there. In terms of, the knowledge that a paralegal has, or a young lawyer, or really anyone on the team, I absolutely agree with you about the communication. And for me, the first experience I had with a paralegal was when I was a summer associate at a large law firm. And the paralegal was a senior paralegal. Everyone loved this woman. She was extremely bright. She was an older woman. She looked like a librarian with the little glasses. She was very adorable. And I remember her, so we toured the office. Her role was explained, but then she came by after. And this is where she was really a pro. And I appreciated it then. I appreciate it even more now, what she was doing. She introduced herself privately and she said, here is how I can help you. Here is what other attorneys would usually ask me to help with. Here's how I can be a resource to you. And it opened my mind to, here's who you can go to talk to and ask for help. And she did it in such a way that was just very professional and non-threatening. And that was my first experience with a paralegal. And I actually felt more comfortable going to her with questions than I did with some of the more senior attorneys. And she was always very good about helping. She wasn't condescending. And what she did from a business standpoint is also brilliant, because she made herself an ally to someone who could feed her work. And so I think that that's a pro way to approach most things, right?
I like that, yeah.
Understand what somebody else needs and how you can give it to them. Because the truth is, for all of us as human beings, our priorities are top of our list, not yours. That's just human nature. Let's normalize that,
Yes.
And then we're all feeling fear. In that moment, my fear wasn't, how I could or couldn't work with a paralegal. It was, how do I perform? How do I take this knowledge that I've learned in law school, which really isn't very practical, and not embarrass myself and get a job offer? And while I was experiencing that fear, she made herself a resource to me, so that her goals and priorities, which I assume were getting more work, aligned with my goals and priorities, which were to succeed in this new type of endeavor.
I love it. I love that. I love how you said that, right? How the paralegal introduced herself. I think that's very important, especially for new hires. And I think it should be vice versa. So even if you are a new hire, I did this a lot, especially at a major law firm that I worked for. My entire team, because we were in little silos. So I walked in my entire team, which at that point when I first started was 10. I think right before I left, it was about 25. Wow. So, the law firm really expanded within the 5 years I was there, and I got to see the changes of the processes and things like that, which I welcomed a lot, because they really included us. in those changes. It wasn't like, hey, one day, that's it, this process has changed, do this from there on. They were more incorporative of the paralegal, because really the process is going to affect the employees the most. Which is another thing, right? So when the processes change and maybe the profit wasn't there, or they lost a major client, whatever the reason was to change the process, that does not have to be obviously disclosed to your, supporting staff, but that the process is going to be changed. Very important to include your staff, right? Because they're the ones that are going to actually implement it and put it into place. So, I don't like when employees, they just love to do that. Just one day sit everybody at a round table and be like, okay, this is the new process, deal with it. And you're like, no, the software doesn't even do that. You're going to have to get a new software. You're going to have to do this. Like, we can't even upload. Like, where are we going to upload this? And that has happened to me before. So I know. It's all about, again, collaboration, partnership, communication. It all goes back to the same concepts. From the time you go into interview, from the time that you get the job, from the time that you leave the job, cross training is always a good one. I always trained our receptionists to handle difficult clients, because that's super important. So the needy clients, the clients that need more attention or require more attention, especially me working at a personal injury firm, we dealt with a lot of mental illness cases. So you have to take that into perspective, right? You have to really put the human back in humanity. And really, if you see that the receptionist or the intake person or the first go-to person, right, the person that usually answers the phone, whatever label your firm has for that position, if you see that they're not handling certain situations, and because you're the paralegal and you know that because you're picking up the phone and the client is, saying stuff, a simple gesture can go a long way. And I would walk up to the receptionist and be like, hey, next time Joe Schmo calls, this is how they like to be handled. This is how they like to be spoken to. Take a deep breath, put the phone on mute, give them a few little tips so that the whole client experience is throughout the firm, right? It's not, I just want to talk to my paralegal because she's the only one that understands me, or they're the only one that understands me. I only want to talk to the attorney. I only want to talk to this person. Like, you never want that. You want the client experience to be from start to finish, right? So from the time that the client walks in, you want them to feel like home, because they're the ones that are paying the bills. So you want them to be happy. At the end of the day, without them, there's no business. So, we sometimes forget that that's what we're here for.
Yeah, you said that really well. And that's for us, that's how we've been able to grow our business over 600% in the past year. It's a client focus, and it's an understanding from everyone on the team, paralegal, attorney, reception, law clerk, that, our service, the reason we're here is to help them, to help the clients. And to do that, you have to have empathy, because, they're going to call you when things are emotional. We are professional problem solvers. That is our role. And the truth of the matter is, if it's personal injury, or if it's like us, we work with small business owners. They're facing, entrepreneurs, a lot of fear, a lot of stress. And, when people are in that emotional state, they may lash out. And exactly like you said, there has to be a team-wide understanding that that's going to happen. Let's normalize it, right? I will say where we draw the line as a company, and something that's been very important for me, is that we will not work with, and we will break up with, any clients that are abusive to our team. And I feel like that is where you want to pick, at least for me, a firm culture that's protective of their people. I trust my team. I'm going to trust that if there's a client complaint or what have you, that my team of superstars is doing what they're supposed to do. And we all know that there is a line between a normal amount of stress, a little bit of an emotional response, and abuse. And for me as an owner, I won't tolerate any client abusing my team. And I do feel like that's an important thing for leadership, but that's a different conversation.
For sure. I agree with you on the leadership, right? So leadership has a lot to do with this. And, just like I was talking about shortly before about the manager, right? So, when an employee is going through a difficult time, whether it be financially, emotional, health-wise, personal, they're again, put the human back in humanity, right? So these are humans. We're not robots. We're not computers. We don't operate on 1-2 code rhythms, right? We don't have an algorithm. Till this day, scientists have not been able to fully figure out the human brain. So why are we going to try and do it as legal professionals? But we can still be human. And like you said, I love that word, empathy. I use it a lot. So once you see that your superstar employee is not failing, but is lacking in certain, areas, or they're just not doing what they used to, come to realization that there may be something else. There may be unhappy. There may be something there before they come to you and say, I need to quit, or I need to resign, or, because also you got to think about it as a leader, you never want to break or ruin bridges. As an employee, same thing. You don't want to break or ruin bridges. That's how I was able to build my company in 2 weeks, because I left my corporate job to go and open up my firm. And in 2 weeks, I was able to get 2 clients because I never burned a bridge, regardless if I left or regardless if I got fired. It didn't matter. I always left with grace, and I always left with respectfulness, right? Because those are 2 things that you cannot buy. And reputation is everything. Whether you're an employee 9-to-5er or whether you're an entrepreneur, everybody's going to talk. The legal industry seems like a huge monster, but it's not. Everybody knows everyone. American Bar Association makes it very clear and unites everybody. And all these organizations like the Young Lawyers Organization and all these other organizations really bring everybody together, and they will talk. And they will say, hey, I had this experience with that paralegal, not sure you want to hire her or them. You really have to understand what the other person is going through. And even though at times we speak the same language, we may be communicating, but we're not listening and we're not registering, which is a difference. And once you see these little things, once you see your employer going through a difficult time, or even your employee, right? So we talk about the paralegal role, we talk about that, but as a leader, and I'm sure you can, add to this, as a leader, you guys go through a lot as well. You are the mother, father, parent of your employees. Really, if you put it into perspective, you're the one that's providing them with financial benefits so that they can take care of their children, themselves, their families. So you have a lot on your plate. And on top of that, on top of all that, you're taking care of your clients as well and making sure their needs are met. So you basically have this huge family, right? Regardless of your, and you're taking care of the office, and they're your responsibility. If your company fails, you're going to fail all these people. And that can add a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety that at times employers don't quite understand. So what's your take on that?
So many things. One, I'll start by saying I'm big on practical solutions. And one of the things I hate about legal education in general is theory without actual practice and doing of things. And so the practical takeaway that I think, anyone listening in could use, and something I use all of the time, is the neutrally stated, non-judgmental, open-ended question. I feel like it is my go-to pocketed strategy for managing a stressful situation with anyone, and it's something like, I'm noticing XYZ, whatever it is you're noticing, stated in a neutral way. What's going on? Help me understand what's happening. And I feel like just, approaching a situation without accusing, without assuming, and just
Very
asking
important.
is the starting place for better conversations in so many contexts, but certainly with a team. Because, for me, I'm very efficient. I am very much, I do things a certain way, right? On a disc analysis, I'm a strong D. I'm just very decisive and action oriented, but I realize and appreciate there are other personality types. And coming from a standpoint of, somebody might be going through something in the home, something emotional, something that you don't see. And there's no way you could know what that is if you don't just ask a question first, rather than accusing or assuming. So, anyway, the bite sized actionable tip, I think, is neutral, non judgmental, open ended question. And it works in both contexts. So, if you're working with an attorney and they're being a jerk, right? Ask them what's going on. If they're just a jerk, and we all know there's a lot of those, right? And I have no interest in recreating that model. But if they're a normal, rational human being, and you just ask them, I'm noticing you're really tense today. What's going on? How are you doing? How's everything going? I just want to understand how I could be helpful to you in this moment. Maybe they'll share something you never expected. So.
For sure. And I agree with you. Again, my whole theme, right? Put the human back in humanity. I think we've lost that. And I think society as a whole has lost that. We get so caught in our perception. It's always like that meme that I love. There's a number 6 and then the 9. And depending on what side of the number you're on, you'll see a 6 or you'll see a 9. So it doesn't mean that the other person is wrong. It's just that they're looking at a different light, correct? So I think we lose that sometimes, and we lose the compassion, right? We get so caught up in our day-to-day to-dos. Like I'm like you, I'm a planner. Like my day is, booked from A to Z. Like I literally created what's called the product method, which is on time mastery, for time management for legal professionals. So I mean, hello, I can't be more of a D like you, right? So yeah, for sure. I'm totally there. And it was funny when you said that, and I didn't want to interrupt you because I loved what you were saying. I'm also a D on that because I took one of those. And I'm telling you, the client experience is super important. Like I said, they are the bread and butter of the company, and you never want to lose sight of that. You never want to lose the reason as to why you came into the industry in the first place. A lot of people, some people, I would say 1 or 2% have been thrown into the legal industry due to their parents being in the legal industry or politics or, whatever it is, the decision that was made. But I was not one of those. I actually chose to be in the legal industry. So I'm very aware of the fact that it was my full and utter decision to, really pursue the legal industry. And I feel because the legal industry pours into everything, every aspect of your life. It's the one constant thing other than love, of course, because love can change everything. Go Martin Luther King. But I think law, it pours into every legal industry. And as you know, right, because you're a corporate small business attorney, it's in every single business. Your clients are very eclectic, very diverse, because every single business needs legal support. And by the time you get into a car, to the point you get married or divorced or have children or, check into a hotel, buy a property, whatever it is, there is always a legal concept. So I think that's what intrigues me the most about the legal industry, because it does hit home to everyone. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't know much about it until they get into a bind.
From the standpoint of an owner talking to a paralegal, things that should be considered and what owners are considering when they're hiring a paralegal. I don't know if you want me to cover any of that, but I know we had talked about it.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead. Start the conversation. I want you to talk about it. That's very important.
Sure. So now very much on the side of business owner and more senior attorney looking to continue to grow our team. At least for me, and every business and every firm culture is different, right? At least for me, the focus is building a team of superstars who very much want to be a part of what we're doing. Our focus now is more full-time employees, but when we were growing, because we weren't really sure what our workload was going to be, we worked a good amount with freelancers. And so I think what I'm about to say would be useful for a freelancer or for a full-time employee. It is important to understand what the goals of management and of the company owners are and how you fit into that system. And while our focus is clients, and it's a very human-centric business, that running a law firm, or any legal organization. If you're at a nonprofit, government sector, it's human centric. We are service professionals. We solve problems for a living. But we are still running a business. And our service, our deliverable, the product we're selling is legal services. And I think that it's essential for anyone on any team to understand how a business works, right? What is the function of marketing, business development, the financials, operations? How much does it cost just to hire a paralegal? How much did it cost to run those job ads, to interview, 20 different candidates, then to onboard you? If you're trained, multiple people on the staff lose time doing other things to train you, which costs the business money. And then
Absolutely.
the software, the benefits, I didn't think about those things as an employee. Now that I run a business, I think about those things a great deal. And I think that anyone joining a team, especially a paralegal in this context, the more knowledge they have about their overall place in the operation of things will make them more effective and will allow them to provide more value to management, ownership, depending on the size of the company. And so, to the extent you don't know those things, you're going to want to ask some questions and learn.
Absolutely. I think educating yourself in the full process of the law firm, right? So a lot of us, either if we're lucky to get trained, but we only get trained on your portion, right? So you never get trained on the full entire process. So you never get trained as a client, right? So I always treat training an employee as training like a client. So you always give your client either a welcome kit or what I like to call the expectation kit, right? Because you want to set your expectation with your client from the time they sign up with you. You never want your client guessing. So you tell them, this is your person of contact. This is the main number. This is their direct number. They like to be communicated with, preferably through email. We have a text system. You can text them if you like. You want to set those expectations at the front. You never want to leave your client guessing as to how they can continue to communicate with you, how they can continue to know how their case is going, where their product is going, service, whatever, service the law firm offers. You want to make sure that your client is never in the unknown. So treat your employee the same way. Treat them like they're a client and say, hey, by the way, so-and-so is the receptionist. This is their responsibility. So-and-so is our legal assistant. This is their responsibility. We also have a legal secretary for this person. Every attorney has their own paralegal, or you're the paralegal for A, Y, and Z, whatever it is. So you're responsible for these attorneys. However, so-and-so may come in and out. You have them as a resource. You can delegate. You got to give the paralegal what happens before them and what happens after them. So when the closing of the case, because that will make the role more efficient, right? So they can prepare the case right off the bat, ready for closing. So if you have a different department that closes your case, does the whole settlement agreements and does all the disbursements of the checks and, the trust and all this, you have an accounting department, whatever happens after the case is settled or closed or however it works, you want to make sure that the paralegal knows what happens after if they're not the ones being responsible for that, because they can prep it for you. They can say, okay, these were all the costs of the case. This was my hourly billing for the entire case. And that way the other department or the other responsible party is not going back and forth with them, because that's not efficient at all. If they have everything they need in the first try, it works, right? Same thing with the receptionist, same thing with, whatever happens before. The before person needs to know the entire process as well to prep the case and the intake and all that ready for the paralegal, so that the paralegal is not wasting their time either. All this is costing the employer money, right? Because the more efficient you are, the faster the cases will move, the faster the projects will be processed, and the closer you can get to closing these cases and closing these projects out. So it's all about, again, knowing the entire process. I think that's my, tidbit about that, even when you are trained. And I think everybody should be trained. I don't think training is one of the most important things, because that way everybody knows what they're expected to do. how they're expected to do it, and what their tools are to do it. Another thing that they can do is learn the software. If you're not familiar with it, softwares have same algorithms. There's nothing different about softwares. I'm sorry for your IT people. I've worked with anywhere from Salesforce to Clio to MyCase. I mean, I've worked with them all. They all have the same system, right? They all have a same template kind of thing, especially when it comes to law. It can't change that much because law is very specific. So if you already have worked with prior softwares, then you're already familiar with the basics of it. But if you learn your software to the fullest, it'll make that your role much more efficient. You'll know oh, wow, I didn't know this could do that. That's awesome. That saves me 10 minutes of creating a template. If I can create the template and it'll automatically merge everything for me, that's awesome. I don't have to do anything by hand. So there it goes, save 10 minutes. So be that, person where you get to be the person training other people. How cool is that, right? You're a new hire, but you learned all these new things. You add value to the company. The company is going to see that. So it's a win-win for everyone. So taking that initiative and not just being the tasker, I have nothing against taskers. There's always a place for taskers. But in order to be more efficient and to add value to your role, whatever it may be in the legal industry, especially, you need to be out of the box thinker. You need to train yourself if you don't know. You need to ask questions if you're doubtful. If you leave a conversation with questions, you are doing something wrong. You need to not leave a conversation with questions. You need to ask those questions before you leave the room. If you're not fully, if you don't fully understand your task, you need to ask. That's basically my slogan. So that's also another, and it goes both ways. Right? So even the employer, do you have any questions? I need this by, this is the deadline. Is that something that is it feasible? Especially if you're working with multi attorneys, right? So if you have more than one attorney, that other attorney is not going to know what the other attorney has tasked you. They don't communicate. So if you have conflicts in deadlines, if you have a task, which one's a priority? You guys need to talk. Let me know what's a priority, what needs to go. Again, efficiency, right? We all need to be on the same page as a whole. We tend to I can't even say the word. Well, we tend to be in little boxes all the time, and we never connect those boxes, right? Even though we're working for the same entity. So that's also my tidbit on that, because it's super important for all of the entire team to be on the same page, not just the partnership between the paralegal and the attorney, the manager, whomever the actual core, what I call the core team is.
Yeah. Two follow-ups come to mind for me, just real quick. One is, I couldn't agree more, and I would challenge any attorneys or owners listening in to ensure that their training for their team is holistic. It's funny, you were talking about, the different processes. We call them glide paths or workflows. And we were just doing a full day training on that for our team on Wednesday. And, we had different team members with different functions listening in on our intake glide path and how we onboard new clients and how we've changed it so that we could get their input and so that they could see how what they're doing fits into this overall. And, doing that was met with such a warm and positive reception from the team. They really appreciated it. There was no pushback in terms of, why am I wasting my time on this? They actually were really thankful and had some great ideas to help us do better. And so I will say, from the standpoint of a business owner who's always looking to keep costs down and to be profitable, but who also wants to build a team of superstars, right? You've got to invest in your people. You have to show them what you're doing. Otherwise, they can't participate and help lift you. So I'm fully on board with that from the standpoint of leadership. And I'm seeing it play out now to great benefit and great return for everyone on the team. And then the other piece of it, even if you're not receiving that type of support and training, in order to get to that exalted place where the people you're working with would do anything to make sure you don't leave, right? I think every employee wants to be that person who, if I say, pay me this or I walk, the employer values you so much that they want to ensure you stay, to be that person, an element of it. And I think you were getting at this, and this is my second piece, is be a solution-based thinker. When it comes to software, as you said, when it comes to your projects, anything. I'm a big fan of A Letter to Garcia. If folks have not read it, I highly recommend. It's required reading if you want to join our team here at Corp Law. But it's just a couple pages, and it really kind of goes through, if somebody gives you a task, right, you need to be effective. You've got to get it done. And I think that for leadership, for owners, we are constantly decision fatigue, having to do this, having to do that. And if I have to spend more time explaining, walking you through the project than it would have taken for me to do it myself, you're not adding that much value. So while, yes, you should absolutely ask questions if you have them, you should also always come to whoever is your supervisor with solutions. And you should really think through those solutions before the list of questions. And if you are the type of person who has more reasons why you can't do it than the opposite, and you're running into issues with your employer, that might be part of the problem. So getting to that solution-based thinking is really a part of, and I think goes hand in hand with making yourself an essential member of the team, such that the people you work for will hear you out on your suggestions and want to make sure that you're taken care of.
Absolutely. I completely agree. The same manager that I was telling you about before, he always said that. Come with me with pen and paper and come with me with solutions. Don't come with me with problems. And I think that's has been the core of my decision making. Like you said, decision fatigue is a real thing. I literally was like that last week, to the point where my family was looking at me like, what's wrong with you? And I was overexhausted. It gets to the point where, since you're the buck stops here kind of thing, and you're like, oh man, I can't pass this on to anybody because I am the decision maker. So a lot of people don't realize that either, so don't take it personal. We were talking about this before. A lot of people take a lot of things personal, and it's not you. You got to take criticism. I've been there. I'm still working on that. I can't take critique. It hits home with me partly because I'm a recovering perfectionist, like my business consultant loves to tell me. And so it's like, I understand that, right? I understand that I have this thing, right? That it's going to be really hard to get over, but I'm working on it. And so when somebody critiques my things, I take it personal, and I have to remind myself that it's a good thing. They care. That's why they're giving you the critique, because they care about the work, they care about the client, they care about the project, or whatever it is that the critique is about. Even I was reading the Christy Wright book, it's not new, but it's the Business Boutique one, which is amazing for any, entrepreneur. And one of her chapters is about fear, and fear is real. And she talks about this one particular thing where, you can look at all the posts, all the comments, and you only focus on the negative ones, right? On the ones that you're like, oh man, they don't agree with me. Why? Why aren't they agreeing with me? Why are they saying something opposite? But I always look at those as learning, right? So we're learning what other people think, how other people perceive the certain situation, whatever it is. And I think we can take that into our roles as paralegals, attorneys, business owners, legal support team, whatever your role is in life. Take that as a learning, situation. Really learn and listen to what other people have to say, because that's going to be important, and that's going to help you grow, and that's going to help you understand, so that the next time you meet someone that's not on the same page, you don't meet them with aggression, you meet them with compassion. So that's my thing.
Always such a pleasure talking to you. Your opinions are so refreshing and so aligned with mine. This was fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kristen. I completely appreciate you coming on Let's Talk Paralegal. You are an amazing leader, and I hope that, you know, the future of legal industry really has leaders like you, because you're such a forward thinker, and that's really what the legal industry needs now in order to really get a legal reform, because we need a refresher for sure. So I thank you, and hopefully this is not the end of our, you know, communication. I'm sure we'll be working on other projects, and you have a wonderful day, and I envy you because your background is beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, shameless plug, we're always looking for superstars on our team. So if there are any paralegals or other folks who are interested in working with innovators and small business owners, we'd love to have your application.
Awesome. So we'll put your links to the website and everything on there so they can
Perfect.
click on there and they can communicate with you. So that way it'll be easier for them to find you. All right.
Awesome.
Have
Thanks
a
so
good
much.
one. Of course.